Hello folks, I'm Alex, this is Alex Unabridged, and today I've got episode 9 of Adventures in Genre, and September was for sci-fi. So welcome back to the channel if that is the case. Yes, September, Adventures in Genre. September was of course for sci-fi or science fiction. I know some people don't like it being called sci-fi. I don't know why. But sci-fi, science fiction, whatever you want. Yes, I went on a complete blowout for science fiction on in September. I read very little other than science fiction. Apart from a few bits in Shorty September reading, the wrap-up for which is already out. I will link to it in the description. It was all science fiction. There's a lot of science fiction in my Shorty September stuff as well. I had quite a big wish list for this, and I didn't get through quite as much as I'd hoped because life got in the way. September was a bit manic, and October's seemingly the same way. But I did still manage to get through all of the pretty much all of the TBR books that I'd wanted, and a couple on the wish list as well. So I've had a good spread of different sorts of science fiction for the month. So without further ado, let's jump straight into what I read. So first up was this one, Nightflyers by George R.R. Martin, and this follows the starship the Nightflyer, where 9 misfit academics are on an expedition basically to find the Volcran, who are a mythic race of interstellar sort of nomadic beings. And the Nightflyer is the ship that they hire basically to take them on this quest to find the Volcran. And it's got this very strange captain on it who never really appears to them in person. And they're quite a strange bunch, these scientists. They've all got their own specialisms. But they find themselves kind of in deep space, alone with this strange captain on this ship, trapped with quite an insane murderer who can go anywhere and do anything and is seemingly intent on killing everyone. And basically, yeah, they've got to figure out how to survive, who the murderer is, what's going on, whilst also, you know, trying to focus on this mission to find the Volcran. Yeah, this one was a 4 out of 5 for me. I really enjoyed this. I'd come to this mainly to see if I liked George R.R. Martin in terms of some style that wasn't the Game of Thrones books, the Song of Ice and Fire, is it? The first one, and I tried that and I didn't get on with it. But it is, you know, it's fantasy, it's different genre, and I thought I'll try some other George R.R. Martin. And this one was quite a nice short one. In fact, this would have done for Shorty September. Yeah, I actually did really like the style of this. It's got. I like the fact that he kind of, you know, the character names are quite bizarre, which is what I'd kind of expect from Martin. And they're often still referred to with their full names throughout. You get some instances where it's just the first name, but a lot of it, you know, it refers to the characters with their full names, and as I say, they are quite strange. And you know, it's a good little sort of band of explorers, if you like. They've all, as I say, they've all got their own specialisms. They've all got very much their own personalities. They all kind of sleep with one another. It's kind of, but which is kind of, it's not salacious. It's not kind of seen as, you know, promiscuous or anything. It's just obviously within this world, that's what you do. You know, it kind of sets up what this kind of world is like. This future, if you like, is like. The situation and the sort of societal norms, just through kind of the general day-to-day kind of actions of the people. There isn't a huge amount of info dumping or anything like that. In fact, there's virtually no info dumping. it's all told through the kind of the story beats, the plot beats, which I really liked. There's a lot of intrigue to it, from, you know, what the Volcran are and whether they're going to find them or not, to who Royd Eris is, who's the captain of the ship, and why they never see him, and what the Nightflyer kind of really is, because it's a very strange ship, and then to, you know, how people are dying, why people are dying, who's killing people. There's a lot of intrigue and mystery to it, and it kept me engaged throughout. It really did. There's quite a lot of tension to it. There's some pretty there's some not overly gross, but some kind of just the right amount sort of gross bits in terms of the murders. As I say, yeah, good character work. They're very quirky characters, but not overly so. Just, you know, that it just kind of, again, it just sets a real kind of atmosphere. There's a lot of flavour to it. Yeah, I really, as I say, I really enjoyed this. This is a 4 out of 5. I will try some more George R. R. Martin away from the fantasy. If anybody wants to recommend anything, I've had Fever Dream recommended to me a couple of times now, so I will get on that one. But if anybody else wants to recommend any other short stories, big books, what have you, that isn't George R. R. Martin's fantasy, that is science fiction or horror or anything else, please do, because, as I say, I really enjoyed this. So, good one to start with. Okay then, next up, I read Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. So this is the first in the Southern Reach trilogy. And this follows a group of 4 women whose names you do not know. They are just referred to as the anthropologist, the surveyor, the psychologist, and the biologist. And it is narrated essentially by the biologist. And they are on a mission to this strange Area X, it's called, which has been kind of cut off from the rest of the world. I'm not sure what it is, whether it's an alternative reality, whether it's some sort of biohazard zone. Nobody knows. We still don't know. I still don't know, and I finished it. That's part of the mystery. And it's that nature has basically reclaimed all vestiges of civilization that were there before. They are the 12th expedition, and previous expeditions have not ended well, shall we say. And basically, yeah, we follow the happenings, the thoughts, the research, the relationships, etc. of this group through the eyes of the biologist. And it's their mission to map the terrain and record their observations, all that kind of stuff, basically. But there are things in the area that are just, it's a weird area, it's a weird space. It's very, the description of it is absolutely brilliant in terms of the sort of the natural environment, but it's very strange. It's kind of like our wildernesses, but there's something off. There's definitely things that are off. And they discover structures that aren't on their maps and things like that. It's all very, very mysterious. So I don't want to say too much about it, because it is about the mystery, this one. So it's, as I say, it's the first in the series. There are 2 more. It's a trilogy. There's Authority and Acceptance. So this one is another 4 out of 5 for me. I really liked this. I will absolutely be reading the next 2. This was just one of the most intriguing books I think I've read in a long time in terms of its plot, because, as I say, as you are following this through the eyes of the biologist, who has, this quite clinical, this quite obviously this very sort of inquiring mind about what she's finding, what she's looking for, what she's kind of experiencing. You get a lot of her backstory as well, and she's quite a strange character in some respects, but I think she's very likable. She's quite honest. She's quite deeply flawed. They all are. And she's there for quite a specific reason, which again I won't go into because it'd be a bit of a minor plot spoiler. And she's, as I say, she's writing all of this stuff down. And one of the things I think I loved most about this is the cadence of the writing. And it might sound strange, like certainly to me it's strange for me to notice this and kind of put this as a major factor for me in terms of why I like something. But the syntax, the way that the sentences are formed, the word order, as I say, it all goes into kind of the cadence and the pattern of the writing. And it's quite, in some ways it's quite formal, in some ways it's quite, I had to read things a couple of times because of, as I say, because of the syntax, because of the cadence. But it works really well in terms of like her character. It's a really interesting way of building that character, I think, the way that her writing kind of reflects her personality. And I mean, I don't know whether it'll continue in that vein in the next books. I know the next book I think follows a different character primarily. But if Vandermeer can do that for one, then there's no reason why he can't do that for another. So yeah, I really appreciated that. I don't usually look necessarily so often quite so deeply at things like grammar when it comes to writing and the way people use grammar. But on this, it was quite evident to me, as in it jumped out to me as something that I was like, I really like this. It just feels right in my head when I read it. It just feels really engaging, which is, as I say, it's a strange word for me. I don't usually notice things like that quite so much. Yeah, the characters are all very interesting, very different types, and their interpersonal relationships are very interesting, and the world building in it is excellent, I think, because the world, the environment is a character of its own. And for me, I love that when worlds and environments really become so integral and become a character, a living, breathing thing in the world. That's it. That's me in. That's me hooked then. So yeah. So absolutely, I will be going on with this series, and yeah. I'm now going to watch the Netflix movie. I haven't watched it yet, but I've been waiting till I finish reading the book to watch it. Yeah, I will perhaps pop that into a wrap up at some point when I've watched it and let you know what I think of it. But the book, very, very, very good. Okay, next up we're over to an audiobook, and this was Neuromancer. And this, I'll say up front, was a DNF, I'm afraid. This follows Henry Case, who was a top data thief, but then was crippled by former vengeful employers, and now he's been recruited by a new and really mysterious employer for a last chance kind of job. I listened to about 2.5 hours of this, so it's probably just over a quarter of it, which is, you know, that was 2.5 to 3 hours, which is a little more than I'd often give a book before DNFing. But I just could not get into this. It's not badly written, objectively speaking, but I just could not get into it at all. I couldn't connect with the characters. I couldn't see the world. I like to be able to imagine the world, and like for me, because this is obviously defined in a lot of respects the cyberpunk genre, and I like cyberpunk. I particularly like the visuals of cyberpunk. I couldn't see it. I for whatever reason, it just wasn't connecting with me at all. It reads a lot more like a sort of noir detective story. At least that's how it came across on the audiobook. And I have to say, I'm not a fan particularly of kind of classic noir detective stuff. Yeah, it's not necessarily my cup of tea generally in that respect. So maybe it was that I didn't like. It does have a hell of a lot of jargon in it, and it makes it quite confusing at times and quite off-putting. I don't necessarily need info dumps or anything like that. In fact, I don't like info dumps generally. But it just, you know, I like information to kind of be woven into the dialogue, or, you know, kind of as I say, the description of the action, things like that. And it just wasn't. They were just kind of almost felt like words were just dropped in here, there and everywhere and never really explained. And maybe it was because it was the audiobook. I don't know, that maybe because I couldn't really go back and look at things, then it might have been that, you know, at some stage I might try it again as a text copy, whether that's on ebook or paperback or what have you. But I don't know, I'm not inclined to do that. I just kind of, the tone of it generally, even aside from, you know, things like the jargon and stuff like that, I just not for me. And as I say, I've enjoyed cyberpunk things in the past, both, you know, film, game, some books, but comics, but yeah, just no, it just did nothing for me. And I found myself just constantly like just wandering, my mind wandering off and just not being interested, and finding myself kind of going, oh well, I suppose I ought to listen to some of this then. And I was like, no, as soon as I get to that stage where it feels like a chore that I have to finish something, I have to get through it, then there's no point, because I'm not going to take it in and I'm not going to enjoy it. So I decided to stop there, and as I say, it will stay on my DNF list, and at some stage I may come back to it in a different form. But yeah, just going to chalk that one up to experience, that it may well just be that one is just not for me. Okay then, moving on, we're on to this chonker. Not all of it, just the first book. This is the 3 Stigmata of Palmer Eldritch, from this lovely book of 5 great novels by Philip K. Dick. So this one, this is set in a sort of an overcrowded world, Earth, which is burning up basically. Temperatures have gone through the roof, and also on space colonies on Mars. This is set in sort of late 21st century. And you know, the world is kind of tedious, life is tedious, and that tedium can be endured by taking a drug called candy, which enables users to inhabit a shared illusory world. But when Palmer Eldritch, who is an industrialist, a wealthy industrialist, returns from an interstellar trip, he brings back with him a new drug called Chu-Z. And this drug Chu-Z is far more potent than Candy, but it threatens to basically plunge everyone into a state of permanent drug delusion, the illusion of which is controlled by Eldritch, and Eldritch is quite a mysterious character. It's quite a hard one to kind of describe this accurately, because it's flipping bonkers. I gave this a 3.5 out of 5. This is good. It is good. But I think this one will benefit from a reread, like a lot of Philip K. Dick, because it is just bonkers. There's a lot in here. There's a hell of a lot in here. It's huge in terms of scope, in terms of what Philip K. Dick is sort of discussing, musing on. There's so much stuff in here to digest that I think this is definitely going to benefit from a second reading, and a third reading, and a fourth reading. It's one of those. Philip K. Dick's like that for me anyway, so I know that. So that rating would probably may change over time. But yeah, there's some of the ideas. I mean, there's obvious comments on capitalism and materialism. There's quite a lot of stuff about religion and theology, colonialism, drug use, the nature of reality, climate change. Yeah. All the things you'd expect from Philip K. Dick are in here, basically. And that's why I like him, because although it doesn't always work quite as well as I wish it did, there is always plenty to think about, and this one is no different. It's got great, thoroughly unlikable characters in it. They all have a hell of a lot of flaws, way more flaws than they do sort of, you know, positives, basically. They're all a bit rubbish in their own way, and, you know, they're all quite unlikable, or you just kind of roll your eyes at them. It's got some really sort of strange and bonkers setups, which I really like. I just love the imagination of some of this. Like with Candide, the people who take Candide, they're doing it whilst they're sat in front of these sort of they're called mins, miniature kind of like I guess they're kind of like almost like little models, like dioramas, kind of that kind of thing, that are sold by this company, who also are the suppliers of Candide. And you can buy different sets for these things, so that, you know, you've got to buy into it. And when you take the drug, you become these dolls, basically, that are part of this set, and you can act out your fantasies with them. But several people can inhabit the same doll, essentially, at once. So there's several people working together, and it's these two dolls, this couple. But yeah, it's just a really weird setup, but I love it. I think it's fantastic imagination. And there's some great imagined ideas about, you know, sort of medically engineered evolution of humans, things like that. You can go to these e-therapy clinics and evolve essentially ahead of time. You know, you can speed up the evolution process if you're rich enough, that is. But you might devolve, so you've got to be careful. There's some great things like that. There's some great descriptions, some great visual descriptions, especially of the illusory worlds in here. And yeah, as I say, it's just a bit bonkers. It did lose me a little from time to time because it is very strange. It bounces around quite a bit, and it's very difficult to, in parts, I found, to kind of keep the thread of what's going on, what's been said before, and the rules, for want of a better word, of kind of how things work. But that's why I think it'd benefit from a second reading, to be honest. I think it's like, there's so much in there that my brain's just trying to kind of like process it all at the moment, and then if I went back in a second time, I think I could pick bits out that I need to spend a little bit more time with. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, as I say, I really enjoyed this. Not as much as some of Philip K. Dick's other work that I've read so far, but as I say, I think this will benefit from a reread at some point. So yeah, 3.5, still very much I recommend this one. Okay then, next up, and this one, I have an admission to make, that this was read in October because I had to wait for the library holes to come in for this, but I was determined to have this as a read for Sci-Fi September, even if it was slightly late. And this one is A Psalm for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers. And this is the first in the Monk and Robot books, of which there are 2 so far, I believe. And this is about a tea monk, or a monk called Sibling Dex, who isn't a tea monk to start with. They're a monk in, I think, gardening, perhaps, that kind of thing, in the city. And they decide they want to change their vocation, and they're going to become a tea monk. And becoming a tea monk means getting basically kind of a sort of a cart on a bike and pedaling around villages and basically being there so people can come and have a good bloody moan about what's rubbish for them, how stressed they are or whatever, or, you know, come and have a cry, come and have a chat basically about anything they want, and have some tea. Sit down and just take a break and have some tea. So Dex goes out to make this their vocation, their life, because they need a change from the city. They want to get out of the city, and circumstances lead them to meet a robot and robots have become sentient in this world, in this society. Many years ago, well before Dex was born, and they were released essentially. They were built as, you know, machines of industry essentially, but they were released by the human population, and they laid down their tools and they went off into the wilderness en masse, never to be seen again until now. And one robot comes back to honour an old promise of checking in, and it's Dex that it meets, and it's kind of then a story of, you know, sort of that relationship, if you like, that budding relationship, friendship. This one is this is gonna be vying for the top spot of favourite book of the year. This is a 5. This is absolutely a 5. This was just a hug in a book. It really is. This is exactly what I needed when I read it. It is funny, it is sweet, it is utterly charming. It made me cry in a good way. It was just a tonic, an absolute tonic. I think even the first line, I was just like, this is what I need. Yeah, it's like, the first line is, sometimes a person reaches a point in their life when it becomes absolutely essential to get the fuck out of the city. And yes, having been there and done that, then I can completely understand that sentiment. And it is very much about kind of, it's a utopia, the society, essentially. Everybody's quite lovely. And, you know, human beings haven't enslaved the robots. You know, when they became sentient, when they became self-aware, the humans went, yeah, okay, yeah, you bet. We're not going to make you do things just because we've built you. We're not going to make you do things. It's your lives now. And left it to the robots to decide what they wanted to do with that. And, you know, it's a very kind of green society. It's the way that the villages are built are about, you know, kind of being in tune with nature, about not destroying the environment, that kind of thing. There's a lot of kind of mention of things like solar power, wind turbines, that kind of stuff. There's a lot of kind of recycling and sort of foraging and all that kind of stuff. It's like, it's a really lovely society actually, in terms of, you know, you kind of want to live there. Or I do anyway. And I think the idea of the feeling of the, like, having such a good life, having a life that really should make you happy and does in a lot of ways make you happy, why it's not 100% fulfilling, why you feel like there's something still missing but you can't put your finger on it. That's a really that's a really interesting discussion, I think, and really interesting idea to look at through the eyes of sibling Dex. Yeah, as I say, the gender representation in this is really interesting as well. You know, the fact that it's sibling Dex. There are brother monks and sister monks, but Dex is, I would say, I think, does not have a gender. I think is how they describe it in one point. So they are sibling Dex, which I really like. And it's they throughout. The pronoun is they, and it works really well. It does work really well. And what's interesting is a little discussion between, like, Dex and the robot Moscap, because Moscap uses the pronoun it, because it says, oh, well, I'm an object, I'm in it, so that's what it is. you know, and for Dex, who's sort of come from, you know, sort of an alternative, I guess, gender and from a non-binary perspective, they even make some mistakes or some comments which the robot kind of takes a little bit, you know, sort of not as an offence, but just kind of, you know, sort of has to kind of correct them on stuff, which I find really interesting as well. And it's just really well, really humanly written and portrayed. The characters are beautiful and well-rounded and funny and relatable, really relatable, including Moscap the robot. Moscap is really lovable, highly enthusiastic about everything. So yeah, it's another one of those books where it is a warm hug of a book. It says in the beginning, in sort of like the sort of dedication, I guess, it just says, for anybody who could use a break. And I would absolutely second that and say that if you want a break, if you want to just read something that is just warm and magical, if you want something short and utterly charming and warm, I can certainly recommend this one. I will absolutely be reading the second one in the series because it left it at quite an interesting point as well. Not a cliffhanger or anything like that, it doesn't really do that. But it did leave it, you know, kind of at a really nice point. I just could have stayed in this world with these characters for a long time. So yes, fantastic book, really fantastic book. Okay, so that's all the books on the TBR done then. So I did manage to get through a couple of other things from my wish list. So first up, I've gone to a reread. This is a retry, this one, and this one was Saga. And I've said this before on the channel, when I first read this, which was quite a while ago now, probably not that long after it came out, I didn't like it. And now that I've reread it, I'm not entirely sure why I didn't really like it. Because on the second read, yeah, I can kind of see what people are talking about when people say, oh, this is amazing, this is one of the best comics series, you know, done certainly in modern times. It's brilliant in parts. It's like the story, the writing from Brian K. Vaughan is excellent, absolutely excellent. The artwork is still not my kind of thing. Maybe that's what really put me off, because when it wouldn't have been that long after in fact, it was one of the first non-superhero comics that I read, I think, when I just got into comics. And I was very much more interested in the art style back then. And because the art style isn't necessarily my thing, maybe that's what put me off a bit, I don't know. Maybe the fact it was a bit space opera-y. In fact, it's very space opera-y. Very much a space opera. That I wasn't into that either, and I kind of eschewed space opera generally. And I'm still always wary of space opera as a subgenre of science fiction. But I think I'm just more open to trying new things now. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe just being exposed to more science fiction in general, it's made me a little bit more open to kind of taking something as it is and not kind of making a judgment almost before I've gone in. So yeah, the art style still not necessarily, you know, something. It's good. Don't get me wrong. Technically, it's excellent, but it's just not necessarily my kind of thing. But as I say, the writing's outstanding. It really is. It's way funnier than I remember it being. And it's quite subversive as well. It's certainly, you know, kind of, it doesn't pull any punches. It can be quite crass at times, but in a very humorous way. It really does hook you in. It makes you want to know more about this situation. For anybody who doesn't know, this follows two soldiers essentially from opposing sides, two sides in a never-ending galactic war, who end up falling in love and having a kid, and they risk everything to bring this new life into the world, and basically end up in the first volume. They are on the run. They've just had the kid and are on the run from both sides, basically. And it's bonkers. It's, you know, but as I say, it's heartwarming. It's exciting. It's mysterious. It's very, very human. There's some real warmth to it as well. And it is, you know, it's a family saga as much as it is kind of, you know, a saga about the war, or the wars. And yeah, I liked the first volume so much that I just went straight on and read the second volume, because that was also on Kindle Unlimited. So that, and I'm now at the point where I'll have to buy volume 3. But I will do that. I haven't rated this because I haven't finished it, and I will wait to finish the series until I rate it. I think that's fair on comics, but certainly very limited comic book series. I will. I'll wait until I've finished. I think is it 10 or 11 volumes, something like that. So yeah, but I absolutely will grab more volumes of this, or even a compendium at some point, and have a proper good read ahead, you know, on from this, because the story wise alone, yeah, it's hooked me in. So I will hold my hands up and say I was wrong on that one. As I say, for whatever reason, I didn't like it the first time around, but now I have learnt the error of my ways, and I will absolutely be going on with it. Okay, and then finally, the last one that I read was Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. This was an audiobook which has had sat in my Audible library for ages. So this follows Jason Desson, who is a physics professor at a college, married to Daniela, and with a teenage son, Charlie. And when we meet him, he's having family dinner night, and you know, everything's you know, kind of familiar and lovely, and you know, he's happy in his life with his family. And he pops out to meet a friend, Ryan, for a drink at a bar to celebrate a big prestigious science prize that Ryan has just won. And on his way back, he's abducted. He's abducted at gunpoint by a man in a mask, who forces him to drive to a sort of an abandoned old warehouse, and injects him with a substance that knocks him out. And when he wakes up, the world he wakes up in is not his world. There he is, a lauded scientist, winner of this great prize that his buddy Ryan in his own world just won, and he's not married, and he doesn't have a kid. And so begins his adventure and his mission to try and find his way back to his own reality, essentially. This one was a 4.5 out of 5. It just missed out on a 5, and I'll go into why in a minute. I love this. It started slower than I thought it might. I knew this was going to be a thriller, but it started a bit slower than I thought it might. Although the abduction and all that kind of stuff is you get to that quite quick, and it's quite fast paced. And then you get a lot of kind of like talking and figuring stuff out and things like that. And I kind of I didn't drop off it at all, but it slowed right down. And although it was very good, for the first sort of quarter to half or what have you, it wasn't kind of, it was engaging, but it wasn't kind of giving me the sort of the thrill, if you like, that I was looking for. I was thinking, this isn't necessarily what I thought it was going to be. But it reaches a certain point in the story, probably around about halfway through, something like that. I won't spoil it for anybody who's not read it. But it's, there hits a point. If you've read it, you'll know what I mean if I say it's really get some help from Amanda. That's the point at which I kind of went, oh yes, yes, come on now. This is what I was looking for. Then from then on I was like, yes, come on. And then it was like, then I just wanted to listen to it all the time. It was about I think it was about 10 or 11 hours or something like that. So for the like last sort of 5 hours of it at least, I was just like, right, I want to keep listening. The second half, thoroughly enjoyable. Absolutely loved it. So this is it's multiverse. You know, it's like, I think it's pretty much sort of, that explains that when I say, you know, he wakes up in a world that isn't his own. This is multiverse. This is alternative realities. And I love this kind of stuff. If there's anything in science fiction that will immediately get me hooked into something, it is the idea of a multiverse or alternative reality. I love the concept of multiverse. And so for me, this was like, yep, I'm in. But it's, you know, it's more than just kind of the science side of the science fiction. It's you know, it's got a lot of kind of more thoughtful philosophical themes around it. Certainly about the idea of not taking what you've got for granted, even if it might not be what you envisaged for your life when you were younger and ambitious. There's a huge deal about reality, obviously, the nature of reality, and a massive amount about identity as well, and the nature of identity, this idea of a multifaceted nature of the self. Which I really love. It's, you know, about the decisions and choices we make and the consequences of those. The science side of it, the quantum mechanics side of it that's in here, the explanations, the thoughts about it, the kind of the questions, if you like, they're well done. They're you can suspend your disbelief on how the sort of the science theory has been, you know, sort of woven into the reality within the book, if you like, the actual kind of science in practice, the applied science within the book. There's some great talk about Schrodinger's cat, concept, another concept I find fascinating. And yeah, you can suspend your disbelief on it, certainly. It's not too much in terms of like, it's not too brain melting, just brain melting enough. Has good characters in it actually as well. They're all, you know, well fleshed out. Not necessarily all likable. I mean, Jason Destin himself is like, I did end up liking him, but there's elements to him I really don't like. But they're not in a kind of like, oh, you're badly written, but just in a you know, you can be a bit of a bastard. There's a lot of mystery to it as well. It does keep you guessing for quite a lot of it on where it's going to go next. It's got great world building as well. You know, the kind of the versions of our world essentially that you see, and the way that the way it's described, that everything's interconnected, and sort of the space between worlds, things like that, is all very well described, very well constructed by Crouch. It's definitely thrilling. As I say, there were some for me, some pacing issues, and that's why it's got the 4.5. I think that's it's just a little, for me, it's just a little bit too slow in some areas, and then in other areas it just kind of, it went maybe on a little bit too long with things that you could have pulled it back a little bit. But it's forgivable, and it never once lost me, it never once bored me. It's just, that's my only niggle with it, really. And there's a lot of twists and turns in it. For me, it comes across as a very ambitious book in terms of the amount of stuff that Crouch is trying to do with it in terms of the plot. Not necessarily in terms of the philosophy and stuff like that. I think he's wisely he's pitched that at the right level, I think. It's more just the kind of all the various bits and pieces that he wanted to obviously weave into it in terms of action and plot points, story beats, things like that. There's a lot in there, and I have got to respect the undertaking that I think he must have, you know, kind of got himself into with this one in terms of trying to plot this out. It's quite, yeah. I have quite a lot of respect for that, because I imagine it was quite difficult. But yeah, as I say, really enjoyed this. This was excellent, and just a couple of niggles just brought it down from getting that 5 out of 5. But I will absolutely be looking at more of his stuff. It's not poetic prose at all. It's very straightforward. And I kind of like that about it. I think that works well in this situation, absolutely. And it's very accessible. It's an extremely accessible read, especially when you're talking about stuff about, you know, elements of quantum mechanics. So yeah, big thumbs up to that. And as I say, absolutely will be reading some more Blake Crouch. So that is everything that I got through for Sci-Fi September. So if you've read any of the books that I've got through in September, do let me know what you thought of them. This month, October, that we're in now, October is for oldies. So that's classics. And I've gone for some pre-20th century classics by women. And I picked one from England, or Britain, and that, of course, has got to be Jane Austen, hasn't it, really? And Pride and Prejudice, a bit of Mr. Darcy, and Elizabeth Bennet. And the European, I've got one European, and that is The Scarlet Pimpernel by Baroness Orczy, which I think is just into the 20th century, actually. I think that was published in like 1904. And the final one is Kate Chopin's The Awakening for the American contingent. And I think that was like 1899, something like that. So we'll see what I make of some pre-20th century female authors, because I haven't read any at all. I do struggle sometimes with the language in books of that age, but I do have access to the audiobooks for all of these as well. So I may do a bit of a listen and read in tandem, which often helps with stuff that's older in terms of language use. So we'll see what I make of those. So yes, but I think that is it from me today. If you enjoyed this video, please do consider giving me a like and subscribing for more content coming very soon. But from me, for now, that's ta-ra.